Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Write or Die Show. I am your host, Randi-lee. On the show, we interview other writers and we talk about mental health from their personal journeys. If you have not already hit that like and subscribe button, go ahead, do that now so that you never miss an episode. Hello. So today with us, I am covered in cat fur. But today with us, we have Jill Wright. Hello.
Hi, how are you, Randy?
I am good, other than being covered in cat fur. It's like stuck to my lipstick.
Hazard of the job.
It really is. Well, my cat was, as always, on my chair, and then she tried to jump onto the desk, and she missed, and she
Oh,
fell, and it
sweetie.
was very sad. And then she ran away and didn't want to be with me anymore because she blamed me. So tell me a little bit about who Jill Wright is.
Well, I'm a mom, first and foremost. I am an entrepreneur. I'm a writer, podcaster, and public speaker. And yeah, I mean, the work that I focus on doing is really helping other moms get through that like mucky, chaotic season of the early years of being a mom for the first time, because it's hard and lonely. And so my whole journey has been just gathering information and tools and passing them along. So that's kind of what I'm all about.
Okay, but that's what you do, but who are you?
Great question. I am I'm an introvert for sure. I am a lover of all things outdoors and mountains. hmm And I am a very independent, intuitive soul.
All right. Well, see, that's much more who you are. But now we got the who and the like what all together.
Yeah.
So we're good. So when I was reading your little pre-questions, there was something that struck me that has not been talked about a lot on the show, because we definitely have talked about depression and anxiety a lot, but we haven't talked about it too much in the sense of postpartum. So I think we've had maybe 2-3 guests on in the past 3 years that have talked about it. So that's clearly not enough. So I would love for you to share your journey with that, because that is such an important thing to talk about.
Yeah, and we don't talk about it enough. You're absolutely right. I've gone on a few podcasts and shared this story, but for the most part, that's not the message that people are looking for, because it can feel a little bit doom and gloom almost, right? But I think that shining the light on having the conversations and seeing the people behind the stories can be really helpful. So thank you for this opportunity. So I've got 2 kids. The first child I had, I didn't experience any postpartum depression at all. And when my second child came along, they are 2 years apart almost to the day. And
Oh,
so,
wow.
yeah, they had the same due date. It was super random.
That is weird.
Yeah, neither one of them came on that day. But anyways, they're very close
Neither did mine.
in age. Yeah. And probably about 6 weeks into being a mom of 2, I realized that things had gotten like somehow so bad. They went from like fine to terrible. And it was probably a lot more slow than that, but it just felt like someone had flipped a light on and all of a sudden I was not okay. I experienced a lot of anxiety and actually OCD as part of my postpartum experience, which
Really?
I've come to find out is not common, but is not unusual either.
Okay.
And then major depression as well, like, and it manifested not only in like insomnia and depressive feelings of just like wanting to escape and like get away from it all, because I was solo parenting basically at the time during the pandemic, trying to start a business, but daycares were closed, like the whole thing.
Yeah.
It was like everything stacked against, but obviously I was also in the like hormonal and chemical imbalance as well of it all. And it also manifested for me like in my body. I have eczema, and I would have just like my finger, looked like flesh-eating disease. That's what I thought it was. It was just like my whole body was just like, listen to me, there is something happening here that you need to like
Right.
dive into and acknowledge, because I was just like, oh, I've got a brand new baby, and my 2-year-old is also autistic, but we didn't know it at the time. So we were having all kinds of behavior.
Oh,
It was a wild time. And so,
yep, been there, done that.
yes. And so the hard part about it is that when you finally acknowledge to yourself that you need some help, it's way past the point um, of help coming soon, because I was very lucky in that I had family members who could come and help me, even just be with me in the day, because there was nothing worse for me at that time than being in the house alone with 2 babies. I just could not handle
Yeah.
that. Wanted to get out of the house all the time, but of course, pandemic, you can't really do that. So we were
Right.
outside, but not doing too many things. We walked and we drove, right? That's what I would do. And I also had a doctor who gave me some medication and some therapy referrals and things like
Okay.
this, which was fantastic. But it does take a lot of time for those to kick in, right? And then
Yes.
for me, it was like I had to find the right dosage of medication. And actually, I'm
Mhm.
still on this medication, like, and my youngest is turning 5 next month. So it's like finding the balance in the journey as I continue. And then the struggle of the perception of, oh, you still need medication. And like, do I really? Do I not? Right. That whole
Mhm.
conversation with friends, family, and then also internally, there's a lot going on with it. And it doesn't necessarily end when your baby turns 1, or you know what I mean?
Right, and I think that's a big misconception too, is when you think of postpartum, you think of just, like, maybe the next few months or yeah, once they turn 1, that then it's not postpartum anymore, but it
Right.
still relates back to it, so it still technically would be.
Yeah, and it doesn't just go away. For some people, it probably does. Like, I
Mhm.
have talked to moms and in my community where they've had postpartum, and then it gets better once they're done breastfeeding or once their kid goes to school or daycare. Like, it's different for everyone, obviously.
Yeah,
But just to sort of speak that into the conversation, that if you still struggle, it's okay. You're not the
right?
only one. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly, and I had never even thought about it before either too much, where it was like, I would think postpartum and I used to be one of those people that would think, "Oh, it's just, just at first,"
Yeah.
but it being pregnant, giving birth changes you,
Mm,
changes your internal makeup. Like, I'm not a doctor, but I definitely know that stuff didn't go back the way it was
yeah,
beforehand.
right? Yeah, I feel that one.
Right? So, I
Mm,
mean, what's to say that my hormones or your hormone, right? They're different than they were before.
yeah, we have to care for ourselves differently, and I think that not only, like, is a baby born, but a mother's born, and a
Mhm.
new mother is born with each child too. It's not just your first one, right? And so you have to rediscover yourself and how you go through life, and what triggers you and what stresses you and what brings you joy. It's all going to be different. It's rebalancing with, and then with
Mhm.
every season of motherhood, as we know. But like, just to acknowledge that it's also you being reborn every time.
Right? I like the way you said that. And what sparked in my head when you said that was that a mother is born, but you're still you. So there's also that, okay, I'm a mom, but that's not everything I am. I've known a few people who they're just mom 24/7 and that's the only thing that they are. And then as their kids start to get older, they're like, "Hey, I don't know what to do now." They're
Yeah.
having friends. And even just at 5 years old or well 4 years old when they're starting kindergarten, it's like, okay, what do I do for these 6 hours of the day now? Like, I don't know, because my entire identity was wrapped up in being mom, right?
Yeah.
So there is that. Yes, a mother is born when you give birth, but you still have to figure out who you are as an individual as well, and like you said, take care of yourself.
Yeah. And oftentimes, because we're so into it and we're so physically and mentally required for the little baby, right?
Yes.
It makes sense that we lose that, right? It makes sense that that needs to take a back seat. But the trick is like working it back in and like reintroducing yourself to who you are outside of that role of mom. That's one of the
Mhm.
biggest struggles my clients deal with, is like, I don't remember. And I distinctly recall the moment where I tried to think for myself of what I do for fun outside of like the babies, and I drew a blank, and I couldn't remember what I enjoyed. I had
Mhm.
gone so far out of tuning into who is Jill, like I felt so lost. And that's a scary feeling, but it's a really common feeling, unfortunately, for a
Yeah.
lot of moms.
And that in and of itself can trigger a depressive episode as well, right? Because it's like, oh my gosh, I'm totally lost. Who the heck am I?
Yeah.
So there's so many different parts, and they're all so very intertwined. So you had mentioned that part of your postpartum was OCD. What
Yeah.
did that look like for you?
For me, it was like I had to look at the license plates and like read them to myself, which
Okay.
was very odd and random. I had never done anything like that before. But it was like when I went by a vehicle, it wasn't so much when I was driving, but when I was walking, actually, when I was driving too, I would just feel compelled to acknowledge the license plates and like read them to myself. And I couldn't not do it. It was the strangest thing. And it was kind of like disruptive. It's not one of those things where I felt compelled to wash my hands all the time or things had to be in a particular order all the time. It
Mhm.
showed up in a very unexpected way, which made me feel a lot of like shame almost. Like, well, this is super weird. And why am I doing this? And why can't I stop doing this?
Right. Yeah.
Here's an interesting thing that happened later when my son was old enough, the autistic child, he did the same thing. And I'm like,
Oh.
like, even just now, I'm
Huh.
like getting weird goosebumps thinking about it because it's like, of all the things, how is this something that presented in both of us? What an odd thing I've never heard about from anyone else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Huh. The world is mysterious.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I know you said that your doctor was pretty good getting you the referrals and whatnot. Um, but how did you kind of figure out, or what best practices did you find that helped you the most?
It was a really long road because even though I did get the referral, so I'm in Canada, so our system is probably, oh, are you?
Is
Okay.
crap. Is crap. And you're like near Ottawa area or
Yeah, I'm in
something?
Ottawa. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So we're both in Ontario. I'm in Ontario too.
Oh, that's so cool.
Our
Okay.
system sucks so bad.
The worst. It's the worst. And I was like very encouraged at the beginning because I went into the doctor's office and my doctor wasn't actually even there. I just sat with whoever was in the the walk-in clinic that day.
Oh, okay.
And this man gave me 2 hours of his time. I was blown away.
Wow,
It
I
was
have
like,
never heard of that,
no.
especially at a walk-in. What?
Yeah. Yeah, and I got to do, like, all of the, assessments, and my husband was with me, and we talked, and it was like it was it was like, "Okay, I feel so seen," but at the end, he's like, "Okay, well, give it a couple more days and see how you feel, and then and then you can see your real doctor," and I'm like, "Right, well, I feel awful, and I'd really like some help today," you know?
Right.
And then my doctor was like, "Okay, we can talk about all the different options." We figured out a medication that was gonna work, and she referred me to some different, therapists. The wait lines are really long, and also, at the time, it was difficult because it was virtual,
Yes.
and it's just not the same for me to
Mhm.
experience, like, the same connection with a therapist. Like, I've had anxiety all my life, so I'm well acquainted with, like, therapy and different types and different people, and it just didn't feel great, and I actually tried BetterHelp, if you've heard of
Oh, okay,
that.
yes, I have.
Yeah, because I just couldn't get in anywhere with anyone
Yep.
in locally, right? And my experience with that was so horrific. The lady that they paired me with was actually, she was going through cancer treatments and just talked a lot about her own self.
Oh.
And that wasn't a fit. And then so I got with someone else, and this other lady basically told me my marriage was doomed because my husband was playing baseball and he was going to cheat on me and blah, 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 like the whole thing. And I'm like,
Oh my gosh.
so I
Okay.
had like a rough entry into it, but I stuck with it because I knew therapy helped me like in the past.
Well, and that's just it. So I'm gonna interject here for a hot second.
Please.
Um, I've said it so many times on this show. Therapy does not mean that you have to go with the first person that comes along.
No.
I have talked to tons of people, um, not just online, but like in real life,
Yeah.
right? Like close friends that were like, oh, I talked to a therapist, they were awful, so I'm never going back. Okay, but that was one person. I mean, in the grand scheme of life, you're not going to vibe with everybody, first off. Like, that's just there. Not everybody is good at their jobs.
No.
That's, you can any industry, you can pick people and go, yeah, those 5 aren't good at their job, but those 5 are, right? So
Yeah.
you just have to keep trying and find somebody that is a fit, because it does work.
It does.
But it can be so discouraging if your first one or your first 2, I mean, it wasn't your first 2, but if your first 2 say, "We're awful," it can be so discouraging to be like, "Hey, I'm gonna try again," right?
Right.
Like, at least you had that experience that, "No, I know therapy works. These 2 just aren't working." Like, that's really good, because who knows what would have happened had that been your first 2 experiences. Maybe you would have given up. Like, who knows?
Right.
We don't need to know, but
And as you say this, I'm just thinking about people who are dating and trying to find their like soulmates. Like, you meet one person, if it's not them, you're not going to give up. Like, this is wild.
that's a great analogy.
Like, come on, there's more than one man or woman in the world that you can date and see, and you're not going to be a fit with everyone, and that's fine.
Exactly.
Give up. I want to also lean into other things that worked for me aside from therapy and medication, because I discovered something that really was transformational for my insomnia. And because I didn't want to take a sleep aid medication, because my spouse he didn't wake up with the babies. Like, he just couldn't hear them. And so I didn't
My husband too.
yeah, it was annoying.
Yep, sleep through a fire alarm and everything. Like, come on.
So knowing that I was the one who had to wake up, I didn't want to be sedated throughout the night, no matter how tired I was, right?
Makes sense.
But every time I heard a stirring, I was up and couldn't go back to sleep. So I was getting like really exhausted. And so my doctor signed me up for this free program through OHIP that was run virtually. And it was a cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia specifically.
Oh, okay.
Which I had never heard of. And the guy was really great. And we all met virtually. And there was a bunch of people of all different ages, of all different stages, men and women. And he took us through this whole like 6-week program of resetting our sleep. And he was really teaching us about insomnia, because he was what I remember most clearly him saying was, insomnia is not a physical problem, it's a mental problem. And I'm like, oh, that's interesting. Gives me a lot of power in fixing it, but also it's a little bit like pressure, right?
Yeah.
But it was fantastic. And so once I was able to get my sleep back in order, things started falling into place. I was able to I found a podcast called Meditation Minis, and there's a hypnotherapist named Shell Hamilton, and she does 10-minute meditations.
Oh,
so I could fit them in anywhere.
Yeah.
I could literally do it while I was in the bath, like I can leave my kids for 10 minutes to go do this. I mean, depending on their age, right?
Right. Obviously.
But it was so easy to fit into my day that I just kept practicing those. And guided meditations are really helpful for me, I find.
Nice.
And the other thing that really helped me a lot was just surrendering to accept help. I find like as moms, it's somehow we feel like we need to be superhuman and do it all ourselves. And I was both, you don't want to accept help because the other person's not going to do it the same way you do it.
That is probably my thing. I'm a little bit of a control nut. I want it done my way, which is why my husband goes, well, even if I cleaned up, then you just say I did it wrong. And I'm like, no. In my head, I'm like, yeah, but no, you can still try, or just do it the way I would do it. That, that would be good too.
Exactly. And that's a really hard thing to like let go of the urge, because you're right. That's what happens is that people in our lives, they stop trying, they stop offering. And then you're like, well, crap, I just dug my own ditch, and I'm stuck here.
Yeah.
And I found that just being in the sheer desperation of like, I just need help and I'll accept if it's not perfect.
Yeah.
That got me in the groove of sort of like, oh, okay, nobody died. The world didn't crumble. Like, it's okay if it's not that way. It took me a long time.
Yeah. It's a hard one because things need to be just so sometimes.
Sometimes they do, but sometimes they don't.
Yes, and it can be hard to differentiate when it's okay to not be exactly the way that you want it to be, and the times that it's okay that it is not. It's a struggle. I'm
And
talking about
therapy
my
helps.
struggle.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Oh yeah, my therapist, we worked on that a bit where it's like, "Hey, but do you need to do all of it?" I'm like, "But it needs to no, but do you need yeah, but no, but do you need
Yeah,
No.
it's so hard, and I think we're just sort of, intrinsically for many reasons, but as women and as moms, we're just assumed to be able to handle it all, and
Yeah.
it's not possible. First of all, it's like the idea of being a perfectionist is so unrealistic. Like,
Mhm.
it's just something that I don't want anyone to strive for because you won't get it, and that's super
Right.
frustrating. Like, don't do
And I
that.
think it's also this our Western culture here because there are tons of cultures
Yeah.
across on the other side of the world where moms are not expected to do it all. I can't remember which one it was, so I'm not going to pick one and just pretend. But there's somebody that I had read about when I was doing my certificate for postpartum personal training, and there was again I can't remember which one, but they did wrap like the mom would wrap up her stomach area or whatever so that she could heal, and while she was healing for whatever amount of time, guys, this is a few years ago, okay? Bear with me here as I pull some memories. But she was basically, you don't like, yes, of course you have to cuddle the baby and breastfeed the baby, whatever, but everyone else was doing the housework and the whatever, the cooking, the cleaning, because she had to focus on healing. Because let's be real, when we are, whether you push it out or it's a C-section, the strain it takes on the body just to cook a baby.
Mhm.
I say that because my kid, whenever we see a little baby, it's a baked bun. So
Mhm.
you cook them up in your tummy.
Yeah.
So the strain it takes on your body and the toll it takes to cook the baby while it's in there, you need time afterwards to heal.
Yeah.
Like it's not okay, let's go immediately. And now, I mean, I remember my mom telling me when she was in the hospital, they kept her in for, I think it was almost a week. Now it's like, oh, you have the baby, bye.
I know, it's wild. It's crazy. Actually, I've been connected with a girl who is in Vaughan, and she is opening up a center for women to go to once they've been released from the hospital that provides all kinds of support from medical professionals, lactation consultants, like the whole thing all in one place. And they and or their husband, not or, but like they and if they want their husband can be here like a hotel almost. Like you can stay, get the support you want, and what a privilege for whoever is able to take the
Right, of
time and
course.
spend the money, etc. But I feel like such that should be such a right for every mom to have that type of support when
Mhm.
they come home from the hospital, and just to give us a little bit of space to heal and adjust, right?
Right. And
Like,
it could just be a matter of like when I had my kid, I moved in with my mom. Again, I was like, "Mommy, I need help." And that's just it. You need help, whether it's a spouse that does it or a parent or a friend or an organization, whatever. That I mean, there's that saying, it takes a village to raise a kid. Well, it's true right from the moment that they're born. One person, whether that be the mom or the dad, one person cannot do it all.
no, because you can't be there every minute for the baby and work and support the family and clean and keep a sanitary house and cook and feed. Like, you can't do it all. And it's funny that you say that because I've recently, like just last week, launched this online community for moms that I call The Village, because it's like,
Oh.
right? We're so, especially now with technology, I find we're so disconnected from help, and with the Western structure, like we don't have our parents living with us to help us, most of us, right? Sometimes we're even looking after the parents. It's just, there's so much. And I find that moms are desperate for connection, but they
Mhm.
feel almost shame to show up with their questions, and they're like, because Facebook groups are great. I know I'm a part of a bunch of mommy Facebook groups, and that's
Yeah.
cool, but there's always like there's always this perception of judgment that I feel because I
Mm,
don't know that everyone in the group is like my people, you know?
right. Yeah.
So, and I don't feel fully safe expressing or even answering comments because some people are there just to be mean and just to pick a fight. And I'm like,
Right.
this feels like more effort to participate than I'm getting value. And so I just created this space where it's like, come, show up, ask questions, share your wins, share your resources, like show
Mhm.
up. Let's do a monthly like connection, like meet and greet networking just to see each other's
Yeah.
faces. Like, and my whole thought was like, yes, it takes a village to raise a baby, but it takes a village to raise a mother too.
Right. I think that's, it goes hands in hand. It takes a village to raise a kid, raise a mom, raise a dad. Like,
Yeah.
no one can do everything. And even I know, when we were struggling with who was going to quit their job because my kid was going through so many meltdowns or whatever, um and so it ended up being me, which is fine, because my husband made more money at the time. But even he was going, well, how am I supposed to support everything when everything keeps going up? And it was just like, it's so much. Even if you are the parent that is leaving the house to go and make sure that you have a roof over your head and food on the table, right? Like, it takes a village for the entirety of who's in the household, which
Yeah.
is why I think a lot of those places, not Western styles, have it right in a sense because they have multi generations in the home, so that, if that person's retired and they're able, obviously they have to be able and capable of just cooking the meal. That's just one less thing. Actually, it's three less things to think about because you don't have to plan it,
Yep.
you don't have to buy it, and then you don't have to cook it.
Yeah.
So it's actually three things you're taking off your plate instead
Right.
of just one, right? So, I mean, it just, even the simplest things like that, having extra people, like now, since my mom's moved back in, she doesn't do it all the time, but sometimes she'll just wash the dishes. And it's like, oh my gosh, thank you. Like, just that. I know it would have only taken me maybe 15 to 20 minutes, but I just don't have it.
Right. Or you might have it, but you'd prefer to spend it on something else. Right.
Right.
Like, and that's the thing is like we all have the same 24 hours. We've all got the time, but if we can prioritize and spend that time on things that are actually adding value that are important to us, our lives are going to feel so much more spacious than if we spend our time doing things that are like to do obligations. Like, can we talk about delegating some of this stuff? Can we talk about like sharing the load? Like,
Mm-hmm.
man,
So actually, it's funny that you say that. Because, well, the first thing that popped into my head was spending time on things that are so important, like listening to this show. Um, but this can be part of your self care. You can even listen to it while you do the dishes now. Anyways, but also, um, I just read a book. What was it called? Single Mom in the City. I want
ooh,
to say it was called that. And it's actually a great book for anybody, whether you are a single mom or not. That was part of my review. I'm like, everybody can read this book. But part of what she was talking about was delegating tasks.
yeah,
And if you have, whether it be the connections of people that will do it for free, or you have the available funds to find it, pick the tasks that really don't bring you much joy, or you don't have, not that you don't have the time because you'd have to make the time, but that you wish that somebody else could just take so you didn't have to focus your energy on it, whether it be house cleaning, laundry, doing the groceries, whatever.
yeah,
um I'd say walking the dogs, but dudes, come on, having dogs and taking them for walks is the
the best.
best.
But
uh,
sometimes that's the straw that breaks the camel's back.
It's true. It's true. But whatever it is, and so in the book, she's explaining, delegating is not a bad thing. Delegating gives you more time to spend with your kids or to spend on your self care or whatever it is that you need to use that time for. So as
Mhm.
you said that, I'm like, oh yeah. So yeah, I'm pretty sure it was called A Single Mom in the City. Cannot remember who wrote it, but it's on my blog. Go check out the review, then you can see who the actual author is. It was just a couple weeks ago, so the blog, so it won't be too far back in the blog.
That's awesome. I love this idea. And I think that it really ties in well with focusing on like your zone of genius, right?
Mhm.
Because something that you spend, like, I don't know, let's say mowing the lawn
Yeah.
is something, right? That it might take you an hour to do it and you really hate it, but the kid next door has more energy and youth, and so he can
Right.
get it done in 20 minutes, right? The other thing, I'll just put this out there for anyone who's like, okay, but like I don't have a friend or someone who can do it for free and I don't have money. I used to barter time. I used to say like, okay, cool. We're having a play date with a girlfriend or like whatever, because I could still do play dates with my friends at that time. Now my kids have their own friends.
Yeah.
Right. But I was with my friends. And so we knew each other. It was comfortable. We were both in the same like life situation and cycle at that time. And I'm like, okay, we're going to go to your house for the morning on Wednesday. You're going to get 2 hours to like fuck off and do whatever you want to do. I'm going to get 2 hours to work on my laptop or read a book or go out, leave your house, and the babies are going to stay here. But for the 4 hours, one of us will be watching them. It's like shift work.
Yeah.
And we just like, and they were in little bubs. Like they were not difficult to look after. They were sleeping most of the time, but
Somebody had to be there.
Somebody had to be there. And we just toggled back and
Yeah.
forth. And it was great because we both got a chunk of time knowing our baby was cared for. Like we can't drop them off at play dates yet because they're obviously too small. But we created our own system of working in that free time.
Yeah, it's perfect.
Yeah.
Exactly. So there's different things that you can come up with. And for those in Ontario, there's, if high school students need 40 hours of community service hours, so
True.
maybe you can't afford to pay the kid next door, but hey, I'll sign off on your hours.
Yeah, that's so true. I've got a 14-year-old stepson who's going through those right now. That's a really good idea, actually. I'll point him in that direction. Yeah.
That's actually, so my kid did some of his hours for watching his nephew.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, cool. Watch your nephew, sign off on a couple of hours, and it helps he was here, so it helped me be able to, he would watch him actually when I'd come up here and do the show. And, my stepdaughter, she was off at work, right? So we had my grandson, and it's like, hey, well, you watch him. I'm doing this. It works. It's that barter system, but a different way of thinking about it, and it only works if obviously the kid needs volunteer hours. But if you're in Ontario like we are, they need them.
Right. They need them.
Yeah, my kid just recently finished them all by actually watching it was our dog, but she had to have an abscess removed. So because we have 3 dogs, so she had to be segregated. So it wasn't just like hanging out watching the dog that you live with. No, it was very particular to making sure that the drain was clean and making sure that when she went outside, she was on leash and you had to put the other dogs away and here's her medicine, right? So it was much more complicated than, hey, you're just hanging out with your dog. That doesn't count. But to do all these other little things that I would have had to do, I would have had to, leave work, come home, make sure she goes outside, come back. So it works. And it's, thinking outside the box sometimes can create that village that you maybe didn't have before.
Totally.
So any last words before we kind of talk about your book, and any last words for the new moms out there?
For the new moms, just give yourself grace. It's hard and it's supposed to be hard, and there's joy and there's love and there's wonderful things, but don't get bogged down in the hard because it will get better. It will get better.
I like that. Yeah. It's up and down and for the rest of your life, but it's okay because you know what? The downs make the ups 10 times better.
Yeah. So true.
So what have you written? What's going on?
So the book I wrote is actually it's called Happy, Healthy, Wealthy, and Wise. And it's basically like a page a day calendar, but in book form. So you don't have to read it cover to cover. I'll give you the backstory. When I was in university, I've always been into like personal development, personal growth, self-help books, that type of thing. And I was in therapy because I've always had anxiety. And I found that when I was triggered or in the throes of a panic attack or something, I couldn't remember the tools that I learned in therapy. Because like the portion of your brain that can access information actually turns off when you're in fight or flight, which I learned later. So I just kept a Word doc on my computer that I could just open up and be like, okay, I choose this one. Like I'll try this as a lifeline. And the Word doc just over the years kept getting bigger and bigger. And I would take different things. And eventually I was like, oh, this is so helpful that like other people need access to this too, because I'm clearly not the only person who is in a situation where they cannot mentally access their tools when they're in panic. And so I categorized all of my things into 4 pillars: happy, healthy, wealthy, wise.
Yeah.
And it's literally a page a day. I also like to look at it like an oracle kind of book, much like a deck of tarot would be, or something you just literally pick, like flip it open wherever it is that's a good one for you today. Or you can go at it more intentionally and say, okay, I really want to foster happiness today. I'll open up the happiness chapter and pick one. And so
Oh,
it's like 1 or 2 paragraph anecdote with either a quote or a journal prompt or an affirmation or something at the bottom.
yeah.
And the intention is like, keep it by your bedside or on your coffee
Yeah.
table and just like pick it up, because moms don't have time to read. You know, I do. I prioritize it.
Right.
But we, for the
It
most
can be
part,
hard.
the moms in my group don't prioritize that, but they want to, but they're stuck in the muck. They haven't quite figured out time management yet because they haven't booked a session with me.
Right.
Right. But it's an easy tool. And I think I envision it for like high school grads. And I'm actually doing a speaking event at the school board next in a couple of weeks for a graduating class. And I'm going to be pulling out a lot of these things because it can be such a tool for anyone who's in a transition, going into the workforce for the first time, or like maybe your kids have flown the nest and you're all of a sudden a mom, but you don't have your kids at home and you're kind of lost. Like, just a really great resource to reconnect to yourself.
That's awesome. I did something similar because I could not find a resource like that. So there's no paragraphs, no reading. So yours is different, but I wanted just like a quick little self-care book.
Yeah.
And I was like, I can't find one that has everything because I wanted it to be dependent on my mood, like you said.
Yeah.
So I just did like crosswords,
Mm.
coloring pages. I think there's some recipes. A lot of them are my friends' recipes. So I was like, hey, I need some good ones. And so I just like different random little things that take you like 5 minutes to do that just kind of shuts your brain off of other stuff. But it's like, yeah, that resource needs to be there. I like how yours those has the little paragraphs to give you that little oomph.
Yeah.
That is really good. Now mine is more like activities. I like activities. It
That's so cool.
feels like once you become an adult, people forget that you like to have fun.
Right.
Like, you know how adult coloring books became all the rage? Okay. So, funny story here. I think it was about maybe 3 to 4 years prior to adult coloring books being all the thing. I still always colored because it's fun.
Yeah.
So I was at a kickboxing tournament and I had brought my coloring books and my crayons. Yep, I use crayons when I color. And so I brought them out and brought extra for other people in case they want to do it. And at first they're like, "Really? You're gonna color?" And I had my Winnie the Pooh coloring book. That's my fave. And they're kind of laughing, and I'm like, "No, honest, that this is so relaxing. It's gonna get your mind off of your upcoming fight." So we're all coloring, and totally works, right? Couple years later, everybody's talking about these adult coloring books and oh, it's so relaxing. It's so good for your self-care. And I'm like, dudes, y'all made fun of me for this.
Mm-hmm.
Like, seriously? But
You're a pioneer.
I know. If only I got the real credit I deserved.
Right?
But so it's nice to have activities to do. So
Yeah.
it's kind of neat. But I love your book. What is it called again? Say it again.
Happy, healthy, wealthy, and wise.
I love that. And where do people get it?
You can get it anywhere. It's on Amazon, but it's in like Chapters and Target and Walmart and Barnes and Noble and
Oh,
my website. Yeah.
all the places, guys. All the
Anywhere.
places.
Yeah.
And where do we follow you?
Oh, on social, I'm at Grow Like a Mother. That's the name of my podcast, Grow Like a Mother.
Oh, I like it.
Yeah, and my website's just my full name, jillwright.ca.
Very nice. Any last words you want to share before we say goodbye?
Just to trust yourself and to really lean into whatever it is you're feeling at any particular time, because the feeling is there to tell you something. It is like a literal beacon, like to signify fear or worry or happiness. Like your feelings are there to give you a clue to dive a little bit deeper. So don't run away from them, like sit with them.
Oh, I like that. Thank you so Thank you so much for being on the show.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
As always, thank you so much for the amazing guests that we have on the show. Be sure to check out their links down in the description below. If you want to support the channel, go ahead and check out our merch store. We've got some very cool things on there. That's my favorite. Sorry, I'm busy ending the stigma. But there's some other very cool designs. 10% of the proceeds always goes back to the Canadian Mental Health Association. Be sure to follow us on Facebook at RV Media because we have some great new shows coming up and you never want to miss any of those episodes. And remember, the only way to end the stigma of mental health is to speak openly and honestly. Bye!